Hi everybody, Penny here. Welcome to my kitchen. So I don't have anything in front of me today because we're going to do it all over on the stove. And we are going to make beef stew with pastry. Now this isn't like the rolled pastry like you'd put on a pot pie or anything like that. This is a fluffy biscuit type pastry that I've been making for 25 years maybe. It's so good, and it's my favorite part. So we've done it a little different today, but I hope you enjoy it. Thanks. Bye. Okay, so here's all of our ingredients. We've got some beef, chopped mushrooms, 1 large Spanish onion or 2 regular onions, about a half a dozen carrots, all sliced about a ½ inch thick. I've got them cut on a diagonal, but you don't have to do diagonal. About a cup of frozen peas. Well, how many potatoes was that? However many you like. Cut into bite-sized pieces. We've got half a bottle of leftover wine. That, of course, is optional. We're going to use some Worcestershire sauce, some oregano, a bay leaf. The kettle is boiled, and I'm going to put in 2 packages of beef oxo. If you don't have any beef oxo, don't worry about it. Your stew will still be fine. We've also got a large package of whole mushrooms that I sliced up. Now, I only put mushrooms in if I have them in the house. They're optional, same as the wine, but they do add a lovely flavor. If I had a turnip in the house, I would also put in a turnip or even parsnip. But you put in whatever floats your boat for your stew. So this was actually a roast that I got on sale. So per pound, it was cheaper than the stewing beef. And I've patted it dry and I've cut it up into bite-sized pieces. And our pan is warming up very nicely there on medium high-ish. So what we're going to do is we're going to salt our beef. There we go. And pepper. Now I like pepper. So that's a lot of pepper. If you don't like that much pepper, then you don't have to worry about it. Okay, so now we've got our pan nice and warm. I'm going to put in some oil. This happens to be olive oil, but whatever oil you have is fine. And because it's olive oil and I don't want my oil to burn, I'm also going to add a couple of tablespoons of butter. And when the butter melts and mixes with the oil, it keeps the oil from burning. Okay, so we're good to go. Now, we're going to brown our beef first, and we're going to do that in 2 batches, because if you crowd your pan, you're going to end up steaming your beef instead of browning your beef. And browning your beef is very important, because when you caramelize or brown your beef, it gives you lots and lots of flavor. Now this is a big Dutch oven, but whatever is the heaviest pan that you have in terms of the bottom, that's the best pan to use. Once we get the stew done, we're going to let it go in the oven on 325, 350 for 2, 3, even 4 or 5 hours. However long you have would be awesome. And you don't want to stir this too much because you want it to brown and caramelize. So I'll get this step done and we'll be back for the next one. Okay, so our beef is nice and brown, and as you can see, there's some browning on the bottom of the pan. That's called fond, and that means flavor. So the next step, because we have mushrooms, we're going to put in the onions and the mushrooms, because both of those vegetables naturally release liquid. Now turn the heat down to medium, and we're going to put those vegetables in, give them a little stir, and we're going to salt them, and that helps draw out the liquid. And as the liquid draws out, then we'll be able to deglaze the fond. Why it's not called defond, I don't know, but it's called deglazing the pan, and you need liquid to do that. So we'll let this fry down a little bit, and we'll be back for the next step. Okay, so our onions have started to soften and our mushrooms are just starting to get a little bit of color. So at this point, I'm going to put in just a kitchen tablespoon of oregano. And you want to put that in fairly early because you want your spices, your herbs to waken up because they're dried herbs, right? And I'm going to add, that's a very small bay leaf, so I'm actually going to add 2. And we're also going to add about a tablespoon, maybe 2 tablespoons of Worcester sauce. And that's a lot of flavor. Okay, so when these are nice and soft, we'll be back to add the wine. Okay, so as you can see, there's some liquid in the pan now. So if you don't want to use wine, you don't have to. You can just scrape up the fond parts, the brown parts, with that little bit of liquid. Or you could add some beef stock a little bit early. But we're going to add a little bit of red wine, and then we're going to deglaze the pan. There we go. So that's about half a bottle. And I'm going to turn it up a little bit, up to like 8. So medium high. And then I'm going to use a flat wooden spatula, simply because I don't want to scratch my pan. But you could use rubber, you could use silicone, or you could use steel if you have a stainless steel pan. Okay. So now what we're going to do, because we've turned it up on high, we're going to let that wine reduce down to pretty well nothing, because the onions and the mushrooms are going to absorb the flavor and intensify the flavor. There we go. Okay, so that's going to take a few minutes and then we'll be back again. Okay, as you can see, pretty much all of the wine has evaporated off and our mushrooms are a lovely burgundy color. So now we're going to add back in our meat along with any juices that might have accumulated on the plate. There we go. And we're going to add in our carrots. There we go. And we're going to add in 4 cups of beef broth. Now this is 4 cups of boiling water with 2 packages of the beef oxo. If you have homemade beef broth, go for it. If you have a carton of beef broth, that's roughly 4 cups in a carton, or 1 liter. So you can go for that. So what I'm going to do is let this come to a boil. Then we're going to add the potatoes. Now the potatoes have been rinsed and the water has been salted so that they wouldn't turn brown. So I'm going to add the water and all from the potatoes, bring that to a boil, and then I'm going to put it in the oven for about 3 hours on 325. At that point, we'll be back. We'll add the peas, we'll thicken the stew, and then we'll do the point of the video, which is the pastry. So we'll see you back shortly. Hey everybody, so this has been in the oven for about 2.5, almost 3 hours, covered of course on 325. Now I have it on top of the stove, almost on medium, because you want to keep it really, really hot in order for the pastry to work. Now, as you can see, come in closer, Barry. As you can see, the water, the broth doesn't quite cover all the vegetables. Now, if I wasn't doing a pastry, I would probably leave it like that. But doing the pastry is going to soak up some of that liquid. So I boiled the kettle, and I'm going to add enough liquid just to cover the veggies, just like that. And that's boiling water, so we don't have to worry about that cooling it down. Now I'm going to add our defrosted frozen peas, and we're going to give that a little stir. Oh, doesn't that look good? And the peas are defrosted, so they just need to be warmed up. But once we put the pastry on, this is going to go back in the oven. Now, I'm going to show you a trick for thickening your stew. At the beginning, we did not coat the beef with flour. And I did that on purpose because I wanted to show you a different way to thicken your stew gravy, for lack of a better word. And this is also how I actually make gravy after I cook a roast or a chicken or a turkey. This is a Tupperware container, but you could use a mason jar, you could just use a bowl and a whisk, but it's about 4 tablespoons, heaping tablespoons out of your kitchen drawer, not measuring tablespoons, about 4 tablespoons and a little bit more than that of water. And then give it a good shake in this or a mason jar or whatever you have on hand, or give it a really good stir to make sure you get out all the lumps of flour in the bowl. So now we're going to take a strainer, and you're going to want to come a little closer, Barry. We're going to press this down a little bit, and we're going to turn it back up a little. And we are going to whisk in our flour mixture very slowly so you don't get any lumps. And this again is how I make my gravy. I don't use the strainer, I just put the flour and water mixture very slowly into a simmering pan of the broth or stock from whatever I'm cooking, along with some maybe potato water or vegetable water, or for example chicken stock, you know, whatever I'm using that particular day. There we go. Almost done. There we go. Lay that back over there. Put that in the sink. And then we're going to stir this around. And ta-da! You have thickened gravy in your stew. Now, you do want to cook that out. Just let it simmer for a good 15 minutes or so, and then your stew is ready. But we are going to do pastry. So I'm going to gather up all the pastry ingredients, and then we'll be right back. Hi everybody. Okay, so we're ready to make the pastry. I've preheated the oven to 350. It was on 325 with the stew. Now it's up to 350. You could even go to 375. But you know, everyone's oven is a little different, so it's all good. You have to make sure your stew stays nice and hot, like it's still bubbling on top of the stove, because if not, if this is cool and you're trusting the 20 minutes or so that it's going to be in the oven to warm it all up, then the top of your pastry is going to be cooked, but the underneath is going to be gooey. You don't want that. So you got to make sure that your stew is still nice and hot. I learned that the hard way. When I had company over, by the way, that was embarrassing. Okie dokie. We have 4 cups of all-purpose flour, and we're going to put in 4 teaspoons of baking powder, 1 per cup. I'm going to put in about a half a teaspoon of salt. There we go. Doesn't have to be real specific at this point. And we're going to put in, oops, sorry, that was a little loud, 2 kitchen tablespoons, not measured per se, of sugar. Just like that. There we go. And then we're going to mix that up a little bit. And then we're going to put the butter in. So it's 3/4 a cup of butter. Put it all in. Yep. 3/4 cup of butter. And Caitlin is going to take my new pastry cutter. Oh, sorry. And she's going to mash it in. As soon as she puts that over that way, she's going to mash that in to the flour. Just like that. Until it's all nice and crumbly. So we'll be back as soon as that's done. All right, so Caitlin has done a fantastic job of making this all crumbly. So I'm making a hole in the middle, or a little well, and I have 1 can of tin milk. Now, if you don't have tin milk, don't worry about it. You can use whatever milk you have. But traditionally, this recipe calls for tin milk because this came from a friend of my mom's, Sharon, who lived in a little teeny tiny town about 3 hours or so outside of St. John's called Trinity. And if you ever have the chance to go there, it is beautiful. And of course, she used tin milk. So this is Sharon's recipe. So I'm going to put in about half of the can. And then we're going to start folding it in. So folding means you come through the middle and you literally fold it over. And then you come around, you fold it over, come around, you fold it over, come through the middle, you fold it over, and so on. Okay, so that bit of milk is already incorporated. Now we're going to put in the other bit, the other half. And it might actually take a little bit more milk because this needs to be moist but lumpy. That's why we're folding rather than stirring, because if you over mix it, it's not going to turn out right. Caitlin, can you get me the other milk out of the fridge? Thank you. So we're going to need another drop of milk because it is still lumpy, but it's not fully moist just yet. So we're going to need another drop of milk, and I've already drained that one. Here she comes. Thank you. Excellent. So we don't want to add too much more, because we don't want it to be overly wet. But we do need it to be all moist. So you're going to need, I would venture to guess, at least 2 cups, maybe 2.5 cups. It depends on how much moisture is in your butter, you know, how dry it is that day, humidity. Baking is all a little different everywhere you go. Okay, I'm just going to put in another little splash, and that should be good. Yep. Can you see the difference? That is moist but lumpy. It is not dry. See? It's not dry. So I'm just going to take this little bit off. Since I've already got my clean fingers dirty, but that's okay. Okay. Let me. And then we're going to drop this in by spoonfuls, similar to the way you would do a dumpling or a doughboy. But this recipe was introduced to me as a pastry for stew. So that's what I call it. Here we go. Oops. So as you can see, unlike a dumpling, they don't sink right to the bottom. They kind of float there on top. Whereas a dumpling or a doughboy would normally sink down, and then as it cooks, would come to the top. So I'm going to get this as evenly spread out as we can. Oh, that looks so good. I'm so excited. I haven't made this in forever. But it's a beautiful January, cold, wintry day, worthy of stew and dumplings. It's so good. Absolutely. Okay, so this is going to go in the oven for about, uncovered, at 350 for about 20 to 25 minutes. And then we'll be back. Ta-da! Beef stew and pastry. Oh my goodness gracious. Oh, look at that. Look at that. Oh, wow. Oh, I'm just going to have to take another piece just because I got to get in there. Oh, cool. Now let me get the other spoon. get some meat in there. Now, that is a Sunday supper. I hope you give it a go. Enjoy. Bye. Oh, that looks so good.